Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Harvey. Super excited to be here today to present this. Even though it's a little bit weird, I'm not doing it live. Used to doing it live. Let's start by talking about the core of the topic, which is learning to be better digital citizens. And it's something that I've been thinking about for years and quite frankly want to share my vision of things with you all. So let's go on the first slide. For those who don't know me, which is probably the majority of you, my world has been gaming, and I feel very fortunate that my parents never really introduced me to boys things and girls things. I pretty much did everything from, you know, Barbies to gaming to cooking to sports and whatnot. Like there was never any girl guy activity, and so gaming was just part of what I was doing, like reading a book or watching a movie or gaming. So I gamed my whole life. It was just part of who I am. And fast forward to when I'm 17, that's when I jumped in to what is now my world, which is esports. I'm 34 now, so I've done about 17 years of esports, and back then it wasn't even esports. I actually don't remember when we started calling it esports. I feel it's the media that was trying to figure out how to call competitive gaming, and probably at some point we decided that esports was the best way to describe it because it was more than just competitive gaming. It was this whole ecosystem that a lot of us are a part of now. So I won a couple of championships under the esports umbrella, under gaming in Counter-Strike 1.6 and Counter-Strike Global Offensive, for those who are curious. And this is my game face, by the way. This way, this is what I look like when I'm very excited and winning events. But it's pretty much been from having to spend money to be in the space to now like making this as a living, my passion and my drive. Um, and one thing that I've realized is that in 2020 we can't really avoid being online, and there's a couple of things that I've decided throughout my career to fight. So let's go check it out. Um, so these four things here are have been my battles for as long as I can remember in gaming. So um, toxicity, inclusivity, legitimacy, and growth, and how we can be better and how we can help the next generation have a better space, as they have been my battle. I've been pretty vocal online for inclusivity, and I'm always fighting in the mainstream media for legitimacy. And although I've been talking about toxicity for a long time, um, we don't really have the answer as to how to fix it. So today I want to focus on toxicity mainly, and um, what is it and what we can do to help battle it, because I don't think it can be cured. I don't think we can be cured of toxicity. But we can definitely do a lot more than what we're doing right now. So these are going to be my three topics today. I'm going to talk about toxicity. I'm going to talk about being a good citizen, and I'm going to talk about being a good digital citizen. So let's start with toxicity. One thing that has been very interesting to see in gaming is how a lot of people from the outside point of view and even from within think that gaming equals toxicity, right? That it's that toxic environments are in part of gaming, and that it's the main problem of that of our culture. And we need to fight gaming pretty much to fight toxicity. And it's one thing that I've realized when I was really young. Toxicity has always been there online, and I think it's the opposite way. It's the other way around. Is that there's this online toxicity, and unfortunately, it's being pushed to gaming but as well as social media, like even in your emails, when you're texting, you're using forums, blogs, like anything that has to do with online, to be honest, can be toxic, and that can be toxic and will most likely be toxic. Um, so it's something that pretty much touches everyone, and it's everywhere. Um, so I was starting to think about it in different ways. So instead of trying to fix the gaming problem, let's go see uh, what helps toxicity kind of become. And um, I've started to break it down, and let's look at when two people interact. Let's break down what makes the decision be possibly toxic. So first of all, one big thing for me is that there's no online borders, right? And that often there's big culture difference because of that. So gamer one and gamer two can be at the opposite side of the world and interact with each other. And they have completely different beliefs, completely different uh, kind of laws, even sometimes, and that can be a problem, and that can create a toxic culture without really um being displayed like right at the start. And then we can also have number two things that I've thought was, well, there's no consequences to action. So most of the time when you say something online or when you do something, it's very rare that there's any repercussion at all. Even rarer to have any sort of law enforcement get involved and punish you for what you did. So second, there's no consequence to action. You can be as toxic as you want, and nobody in your day life is gonna um, hold you accountable for it. Another thing that I realized when I broke down toxicity is that you don't know who you're talking to, right? And I went to the extreme here. I went to, like, you could be talking to a baby, you could be talking to a blind person, someone that's a creep or that's a predator. But you could also be talking to someone that's 20 years older than you, younger. You don't know who you're talking to. So even the age difference and just in general, something that you could see with your own eyes, you don't know who you're talking to. So sometimes it can create toxic situation without you realizing it, or without you kind of wanting to in real life face that battle. Like, I would never argue with a 5 years old and insult them. If I knew they were 5 years old, I'd be like, okay, like, they're 5 years old. Like, why would I argue? Why would I? They don't know anything. So, and then the fourth thing, my face is covering it. But the fourth thing is that I think that the main important thing is that communication subtleties get lost behind the screen. So anything that you do or that you feel is kind of can be misinterpreted, and most of the time it probably is. Like, we've had discussion with friends when, is it rude to have a dot at the end of the sentence, or to like properly write like full on sentences with capitals and commas and whatnot? Does it look like you're actually kind of uh, being like having an ego when you type like that, or stuff like that? So I think that even when you try not to be toxic, you can sometimes create a situation where you don't know how that person reacts. And most of the time, unfortunately, you can react extremely strongly to that. So just to give you an example, online versus real life, if someone tells you something in real life and you don't like it, you'll look pretty much sad or angry, and then the conversation can be diffused right away by either or, by saying, hey, I don't like this, or, oh, I didn't, sorry, you look upset, right? But online, the same situation usually is being handled with like a punch back. It escalates the violence right away to like, well, F you too, right? And you're just like, wait, what happened? So the violence of the words being used is often extremely, extremely strong when you lose these subtleties. So those are just four. There's many more, but I just wanted to kind of start your brain in thinking about this. So um I'm doing a little bit of a segue or sidestep here to being what it means to me to be a good citizen. So you learn in your life as young as you are and can be a good citizen. So whether it's from your home, whether it's at school, or even your religion, we kind of tell you you should be like this, you should do this, you should believe this, you should watch out for this. Don't break the law. Uh, we're going to teach you a couple of things at school so you can be independent. Your parents raise you to become like a good person, hopefully. But the whole society revolves around bringing baby 1 day old to being a good citizen and live in this society together and be happy. And now there's a new variable to that. We're 100% of the time connected. So that variable sometimes, so many variables are actually coming in and out of being a good citizen, but this one is changing everything. It's impossible now to be connected, to be disconnected. And if we just go back to me, 34 years old, it's only been maybe like 15 years old that we're fully connected in my life. So that means I spent most of my life without connection. So even for me, it's kind and new. And that brings us to, for me, the main problem, which is, let's look at this as like a hypothetical timeline of years of our society of learning and teaching people to be good citizen. So this timeline is kind of infinite, because I imagine even when we didn't know how to talk as humans, we had a certain way of handling our society. And then we have now adding that variable of online connectivity, and we only have not even a decade and a half of being connected and online at all times. So we have zero experience. We're, let's be real, we're idiots when it comes to educating ourselves with connectivity. So for me, learning how to be a good digital citizens, we have no idea how to do it. We have no structure in place on how to support it. And we have no one teaching us how to be a good digital citizen. And I think that's the main problem for me for online toxicity. So let's look at what it is for me to be a digital citizen. What is a good digital citizen? Okay, so that's a pretty big question. I can't answer that. It's probably tons and tons of things, just the same way as to what is a good citizen. But one thing for sure, I think that there's three pillars of being a good digital citizen that we are completely oblivious and we don't teach our kids, our generation, and even ourselves anything about it. These three pillars for me are cyberbullying, cyber dependence, and cyber security. I call them the Harvey three C's. Three C's, okay? So remember that, three C's. If there's only one thing you need to remember out of this whole presentation, is the Harvey three C's: cyberbullying, cyber dependence, and cybersecurity. For me, these are three pillars that we need to start ASAP to be aware of, to teach our children, to teach even our parents, people that are not really familiar with technology too, especially the vulnerable ones. I think that people that don't know much about the internet and that use it casually are probably the biggest potentially victim of any of these, and or could be the people that will reinforce those problems. So uh, I'm gonna go real quick through all of them, but for me, cyberbullying, it's simple. It's a problem that starts as early as people can use device. So 6 years old, 7 years old, it's already been problem and issues. And there's so many crazy stats, such as like 1 out of 4 child has been cyberbullied, or is currently being cyberbullied, and those are probably conservative stats that I took years ago. And being cyberbullied increases your chances of suicide by 2 to 7 times. And mental health is so important now in our society that we need to do something and act now to support the generation, but also adults, right? It's like you can't do anything online anymore um, without either urging someone or you know um, not realizing you're urging someone, and or reading really atrocities. So I think we need to be better educated for that. Then we have cyber dependence. One thing that I talk about a lot on the media is how I believe we are taking lightly cyber dependence and throwing the word out there everywhere. So your kid might be playing a little bit video games at night, and you're like, stop playing games, you're cyber dependent. And I think it's very important to understand what it actually is, that it's actually a sickness, that it's a really big problem, but not to put that everywhere when you want to control whatever your kid is doing behind a screen. I think it's very dangerous to throw the word cyber dependence everywhere, and you need to understand what is actually cyber dependence, or what's the difference between that and passion, and understanding the limits and whatnot, and everything that has to do with it. I think it's so incredibly misunderstood. And then cybersecurity. I'm convinced that if hackers want to hack someone, they can do it. So I'm convinced um, I can be hacked and my life can be completely destroyed if hackers can. So it's more about how do you prevent and make the best you can to make sure that you don't go in these situations, and that you're protecting yourself and you're not doing silly mistakes. And I think that there's one thing that we all know we're probably all guilty of, is putting our password somewhere that we shouldn't, using the same passwords, and not understanding what is legal, illegal regarding the cybersecurity and what's been done to us or what we're doing to others. This is a huge Pandora box as well that, frankly, we have no education for. So, who should teach us to be good digital citizens? For me, it's the same infrastructure that teaches us to be a citizen. So it should come from school, it should come from home. But there's one extra layer that we can talk about, is that it should be everything we do online should also teach us how to be good digital citizens. And then let's circle back, because I'm running out of time. If we go back to gaming, how can I support my digital citizen that's also a gamer? Well, it's everyone. It's the gaming companies, the gaming platform, the social media platform, the tournament organizers, the schools and clubs, the gamers. We should all do something. This is a 360 approach that really has no place not being tackled by every single one, to help gamers be better digital citizens. For me, it's laziness if we don't tackle toxicity as a team, and everywhere. It just means that, um, you know, like I said, you're being lazy. You're forgetting why we do this in the first place, to have a safe and fun environment to game. So it should be something that we all tackle together. So I want to end on this. What can you do to help? So think about you in gaming, but you in general as a citizen and potentially a digital citizen. What can you do to help in your position? What company do you work for? Where do you put your money? How can you support like fighting toxicity and supporting our mental health, um, especially when it comes down to gaming? And surprise pop quiz from RV. If you have one thing to remember, it's the RV three C's. Fill them out. It's the cyber B, the cyber D, and the cyber S. So think about it. You need to be able to answer that questions. Three things that I care about. Thank you so much. If you have any question, I'll be answering it in a Q&A. Bye.